She dumped pig slop over my son's head, kicked him into the dirt, crushed his back under her heel, and laughed while he cried for help. Then she walked to Coda's pen, pulled out pepper spray, and emptied the can straight into his eyes, just for fun. My war boar screamed in pain, blood streaming down his face. She said, "That's what monsters deserve." So I opened the gate, touched his trembling shoulder, and gave him one word. 5 seconds later, she wasn't laughing. 30 seconds later, she couldn't stand. And what happened at the 1-minute mark? Even the sheriff said he'd never forget it. It began with sunlight, silence, and a woman staring too long at what wasn't hers. They said I was stubborn for not joining the HOA. They called me wild for refusing to sign their rules, paint my barn beige, or tear down the old hog fencing behind my house. But what they never understood was that this land is blood. 5 acres, passed down from my grandfather. A man who built everything here with his own hands, who fought in 2 wars and still had the strength to raise Coda like a son. Coda was no pet. He was bred in the wild, trained to respond to voice, to hand, to danger. A war boar. 380 pounds of muscle, tusk, and memory. His eyes were smarter than most men I've met, and he'd never hurt a soul, unless told to. The HOA had tried everything. Fines in the mailbox, letters threatening legal action. Karen, the HOA president, stood at my gate one morning, pearl necklace gleaming, sunglasses perched like daggers on her nose. "You're housing an unregistered animal," she sneered. "One call to animal control and that monster's gone." I didn't answer her. I just stepped aside and let her see the warning sign nailed to the gate. Private property. Boar patrol. Active trespassers may be trampled. She scoffed. "You think a sign scares me?" What she didn't know was that Coda doesn't bark warnings. He waits. I've kept quiet for years, stayed on my land, mowed my own grass, paid my own taxes, raised my son the way I saw fit. But people like Karen, they hate what they can't control. And someday, I knew she'd step too far past that gate. And when she did, I wouldn't need to raise my voice. Coda would rise instead, and justice would come in the form of hooves. It started with the shadows. I'd catch movement just past the tree line, figures too polished for the woods. One afternoon, I saw her there. Karen. White blouse, gold watch, phone in hand like it was a weapon. She wasn't trespassing, not yet. She stood just outside the fence, tiptoeing that invisible line between hers and mine. She watched Coda, not with fear, not with respect, with contempt. He lay beneath the shade of the oak trees, eyes half closed, peaceful as ever. Karen raised her phone and snapped pictures anyway, then zoomed in, then sneered. "That thing doesn't belong in a residential neighborhood," she muttered loud enough for me to hear. "You're one twitch away from a lawsuit." I walked toward the fence, slow and calm. She didn't move. "You here to admire him?" I asked. "Or planning your next violation notice?" Karen smiled, tight-lipped and venomous. "I'm here because this pet of yours is a liability. You've got a loaded gun in a cage, and it's only a matter of time before someone gets hurt." I pointed at the gate again, at the same sign she saw before. "Stay out," I said. "That's the only rule that matters here." She laughed. "You think you're above the law because you own a few trees and a pig in armor?" Coda stood, silent, still. But his tusks caught the light like drawn blades. Karen flinched, then walked away. But as she disappeared down the HOA trail, she turned back and smiled. Not the kind of smile that ends a fight, the kind that means it's only just begun. It happened in a flash. One moment my boy was kicking a soccer ball in the dirt near the coop, grinning like the world belonged to him. The next, he was screaming. I had stepped inside the house for a quick call. 2 minutes, no more. But 2 minutes was all it took for Karen to crawl out from whatever shadow she'd been hiding in. She came through the side gate. Not by accident. Not for a friendly visit. She came to hurt. When I reached the porch, I saw Evan face down in the dirt, covered head to toe in pig slop. Brown, slimy, rotten, dripping from his hair, his ears, his mouth. He gagged, trying to spit it out, his hands pawing blindly at the mess. But Karen, she kicked his hand away. Don't touch what you can't clean, she spat. You little stray mutt. She stood over him like a queen over her broken toy, holding the empty slop bucket like a trophy. You want to play next to that pig? She sneered. Then wear what it eats. Evan tried to crawl back, shaking. Karen stepped forward, planted one heel on his back, and pressed. Pressed. Not enough to crush him, but enough to show power. Enough to make him cry harder. Enough to make my blood boil so hard I could hear it in my ears. She looked down at him, at my son, smiling like she'd won something. This HOA has rules, she whispered. Your daddy might think he's special, but out here, trash raises trash. My hands clenched around the doorframe. I didn't yell. I didn't move. I just watched, breathing fire behind my teeth. Karen glanced back toward the pen, toward Coda, still unaware of what she'd do next, but I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't done yet. Still with me? Just type yes if you're here. And if you'd open that gate too. She turned toward the pen, like it wasn't enough to humiliate my son, to drown him in filth, to grind her heel into his back. Now her eyes locked on Coda, still lying inside the fence, his massive head resting between his front legs, eyes half-lidded in the afternoon heat. He hadn't seen what happened to Evan. He hadn't moved. But Karen had come prepared. From her designer handbag, she pulled out a small black canister. Sleek, silver trigger, red warning label. Pepper spray, military grade. I opened the screen door a crack, just enough for it to creak. She froze, glanced back. Just doing a safety check, she said lightly, her voice sugar-slick and smug. Wouldn't want the beast to get too comfortable. Before I could move, she sprayed it. A full blast, straight through the wire fence, directly into Coda's face. He shrieked. Not an animal noise, not even rage. It was pain. Deep, feral, blinding pain. Coda thrashed backward, crashing into the posts of the pen. His tusks scraped wood. His head jerked, shaking side to side like he was trying to rip his own eyes out. Mucus and blood ran down from the corners of his face. The sound of his suffering was so violent it made the birds scatter from the trees. Evan, still crying in the dirt, screamed, "No! Stop! Stop!" Karen didn't. She took a step closer. "Now you'll learn to stay down too," she hissed. She raised her arm again and emptied the rest of the canister in long, sweeping arcs across Coda's face and body. Then she threw the canister over the fence, letting it bounce off Coda's snout and clatter into the mud. The boar collapsed, breathing hard, legs shaking. A low, guttural sound crawled out of his throat, almost human in its torment. Karen stood there like she'd just hunted a prize. She adjusted her blouse, wiped her hand clean with a lavender-scented tissue, and muttered, "Problem solved." That's when she turned and saw me, fully outside now, on my porch, hands clenched, eyes locked on her. She blinked, just once, then smirked. "You should have put it down when you had the chance," she said. She stepped forward like she owned the ground beneath her feet. "And don't bother calling anyone. No one's going to side with a pig farmer over me." I didn't answer. I walked to the gate of the pen. My boots left deep marks in the soil. I knelt beside Coda. His eyes were bloodshot. Foam clung to his lips. But when I touched his side, he moved. Not away. Toward me. Like he knew exactly what came next. I stood, unlatched the gate, and whispered the word I knew he'd never forget. Crush. The gate creaked open. Coda didn't charge out like some wild beast. He stepped forward slowly, blind, bleeding, steam rising off his skin. Each breath came out like a growl. His tusks were streaked with blood and dust. He couldn't see Karen, but he remembered her, and that was all he needed. Karen didn't move at first. She stood a few feet away, arms crossed, brows raised like I'd just dropped a leaky bucket at her feet. "What do you think you're doing?" she asked. "You're really going to unleash that thing on me? After I just defended your neighborhood?" I didn't say a word. I just stepped back. Slowly. Calmly. Coda walked past me. Silent. Heavy. A freight train without brakes. Karen laughed. She actually laughed. "This is your plan? What, you're gonna sick a farm animal on a woman? You'll go to jail, you idiot. She turned to walk away, heels clicking against my patio stones. And for the record, she called back, I hope that pig dies screaming, just like your son will when I report you both to child services. My fists curled. My son whimpered behind me. Coda stopped. His ears twitched. He turned, toward her voice. He couldn't see her, but he knew where she was. And he started walking. Each step left a crater in the dirt. Each breath was louder than her words. Karen stopped laughing. In the silence that followed, I whispered only one word again. A word that cut through pain, rage, and fire like a blade. Crush. The moment I said it. Crush. Everything shifted. Coda's breath deepened. His ears locked onto the sound of Karen's heels. And he started moving. Not fast. Not frantic. Just deliberate. Controlled. Certain. Each step sent puffs of dust rising from the grass. His hooves cracked dry twigs without effort. The weight of him, the raw, ancient power in his shoulders, seemed to bend the air. Karen had only taken 2 steps toward the HOA walking trail when she realized she wasn't alone. She paused, turned, saw the blood-stained Boar walking toward her, and laughed again. Are you serious? She barked, incredulous. You're letting that filthy thing chase me now? She waved her arm toward the street like she expected applause. I hope your neighbors are recording this. I hope the cops show up and drag you away in cuffs. I looked to my left. 3 neighbors stood behind their fences, silent, watching. One held a phone up. Another was smiling. Karen didn't notice. Coda picked up speed. Still no sound from him. Just the rhythm of hoofbeats and rage, and the hiss of breath escaping burned lungs. Karen turned fully now, planting her hands on her hips. Call him off. Right now. You don't scare me. That thing's half blind and drugged on mud. She pointed. One more step and I'll sue you for every penny you don't have. Then Coda charged. Not galloping. Not flailing. Just raw, straight-line fury. Karen's eyes widened. Her bravado cracked. She stumbled backward. Wait, no, get back! Too late. The first hit wasn't even the worst. Coda's shoulder slammed into her hip, sending her flying sideways into my compost bin. Plastic exploded. Rotten cabbage and eggshells sprayed through the air. Karen screamed. Not from pain. Yet. From humiliation. Her white silk blouse was soaked in brown sludge. One shoe flew clean off her foot. You psycho! You absolute... Ah! Coda turned. Head lowered. Tusks forward. He didn't need eyes to aim anymore. He could smell her. The second hit came from behind. Coda clipped her legs, knocking them out from under her. She dropped like a rag doll, landing hard on her back with a sickening thud that echoed across the lawn. The neighbors gasped, but no one moved. Karen writhed, coughing, trying to crawl away, half buried in compost and broken pride. Help me! She shrieked. Somebody help me! He's got a killer pig! No one came. Coda circled. His breath was hot and thick. His tusks were red. And he wasn't done. Karen tried to crawl toward the HOA path, but Coda stepped in front of her, blocking the way. Please, she sobbed. I didn't mean to hurt it. I was just enforcing the rules. She looked up at me, eyes wild, mascara streaked. You're gonna let this happen? Are you out of your mind? I said nothing, because she didn't understand. This wasn't me letting anything happen. This was justice correcting itself, and Coda had just begun. Karen screamed again, but it wasn't the same. This wasn't righteous indignation. This wasn't a threat disguised as a tantrum. This was terror. The kind that leaks into your voice when you realize no one's coming to save you. Coda stepped over her, massive, shadowed, bleeding, and unflinching. His eyes were ruined, but he didn't need them. His ears twitched with her every whimper. His nose followed the stench of perfume, privilege, and cruelty. Karen clawed at the grass, dragging herself backward by her elbows. Please, this is assault. You'll go to prison. I'm the head of the HOA. Coda let out a deep, bone-rattling snort. It silenced everything. No birds, no wind. Even Evan stopped crying from the porch. The whole world held its breath. Then, he charged. The impact wasn't graceful. It wasn't cinematic. It was raw, violent, ugly. His tusks caught her side, lifted her halfway off the ground, then tossed her like a bag of wet clothes into the flagpole by the garden. The metal rang like a bell. Karen crumpled, sprawled in the dirt, her blouse torn, her crown, pearls, sunglasses, every last ounce of pride, shattered. Blood bloomed across her skirt. She tried to get up, but one leg twisted the wrong way. Her hip was broken. She screamed, "Help me, you psychotic hillbilly! You can't get away with this!" Coda pawed the dirt, hoof after hoof, slow, purposeful. His chest rose and fell like an engine in a war drum. She held up her hand, fingers trembling. "Stop. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." But the words came too late, and no one believed them anymore. The neighbors still stood behind their fences, watching, recording. Not one lifted a hand. Karen saw them. "You're letting this happen to me? I'm your president. I protected you." No one replied. Then, Coda reared up, two hooves in the air, towering above her like a living statue carved of vengeance and fury. Karen's final scream was half prayer, half choke. And when he came down, he didn't miss. The hooves hit just beside her chest, cracking wood and ribs alike as the flagpole behind her split. The ground beneath her seemed to collapse. She didn't move. Blood smeared her face. One shoe gone, lip busted, eye swelling shut. Her voice finally silenced. But Coda didn't kill her. He could have. But he didn't. Because what he left her with was worse. He stepped back, stood over her, breathing, waiting. I walked over, slowly, calmly. Looked down at the woman who'd tried to blind my boar, humiliate my son, and poison everything sacred on this land. She tried to speak, but only blood came out. I crouched beside her. "You ruled with rules, with fake laws, with threats and letters," I said softly. "But on my land, we answer to something older than paperwork." I stood up, looked at the crowd behind the fence. "This is what happens when you beat the wrong child and blind the wrong animal." And Coda? He just turned away, tusk bloodied, head low, and walked back toward the pen. The king no longer in exile. The sirens came slow, too late for her screams, too late for her threats, but right on time for the silence. Karen lay sprawled in the dirt, her once pristine HOA sash soaked in mud and blood, pearls scattered like teeth across the lawn. She wasn't unconscious. No, she was awake, and trapped in a body that finally understood what it meant to lose. Coda had returned to the shade of the oak tree, slumped into the earth like a war god laid to rest. His chest heaved, his eyes, blistered and blood-crusted, blinked once, just once, before closing again. The neighbors still hadn't moved, phones still up, some recording, some crying, but no one had helped her. They had seen everything. The cruiser rolled up, kicking dust into the sunset light. Sheriff Lyle stepped out first, boots heavy, hat tilted low. He looked at me, then at Evan, who sat wrapped in a towel, dirt still smeared under his eyes, and then at the woman on the ground, moaning like some wounded creature in silk. He didn't draw his weapon, didn't raise his voice, just walked past Karen's broken body like it was roadkill. "What happened here?" he asked me. I opened my palm, calm, held up a flash drive. "Front porch security cam. Got everything. From the moment she came through the gate, to the moment Coda stopped." Lyle took it, looked at the neighbors. "Any witnesses?" A dozen hands rose. Phones, cameras, silent nods. Karen croaked from the ground. "I was assaulted. I was just trying to enforce community safety. That animal. He attacked me. He's vicious." Lyle didn't even look at her. "Did you step onto his land?" he asked. I... Yes, but... "And did you assault the child?" Karen tried to speak, but her mouth filled with blood. She turned her head and vomited into the dirt. Lyle turned back to me. "Animal control's already on the way, but off the record?" He looked at Coda. I'd put him on a badge before I'd put her back in charge of a neighborhood. I nodded. He knew where justice was. They loaded her onto the stretcher. Her leg was splinted. Her arm, twisted and purple. She wailed when they lifted her, not just from the pain, but from the humiliation. People watched, and no one clapped. But no one stopped filming either. Evan reached out and took my hand. His voice was quiet, hoarse. Is he gonna be okay? I looked toward Coda. He was still breathing, still alive. He'll be fine, I said. He did what he had to. Before they drove Karen away, she looked at me through the back window. One eye swollen shut, face pale, but rage still burning behind cracked mascara. Even now, she still didn't think she deserved it. And that's what made her dangerous. Not what she'd done, but what she'd still do, if she could. The sheriff left us with paperwork. Neighbors trickled away. The sun dropped behind the tree line, leaving a hush in the air that no one dared break. I sat beside Coda, stroking his fur. He flinched, but didn't pull away. You rest now, I whispered. You brought it all back to balance. And for the first time in years, this land felt safe again. 2 days later, the letter arrived. Official seal. HOA letterhead. But it wasn't a warning. It was a statement of removal. Karen Whitmore, effective immediately, had been unanimously removed as HOA president. No hearing, no appeal, not after what surfaced. The video footage, the live streams, the hospital reports, no one had room for her anymore, not even the board she built in her image. They said she'd survived with a fractured hip, 4 broken ribs, 1 punctured lung, and a torn ligament in her spine. But the real damage was what she couldn't lie about anymore. The entire neighborhood had seen the truth. There was no HOA clause that could unpour that slop on a boy's head. No neighborhood safety protocol that could explain military-grade pepper spray in a purse. No law in the world could explain what she'd done to a blind, injured animal. And to a child. The news spread fast. By the weekend, people came by not to judge, but to apologize. They brought pies, flowers. A few brought envelopes to help cover Coda's vet bills. Some came to shake Evan's hand. Others came to look at Coda, still bandaged, still recovering, and whisper, "He saved us." But we didn't want praise. We didn't want recognition. We wanted peace. I stood out by the flagpole that Sunday morning. It had snapped during the attack, splintered at the base, bent by the weight of justice. I didn't fix it. I planted something new, an old cedar cross. It wasn't for religion. It was for respect. Respect for the things that matter. Respect for a boy who never raised a hand, and a boar who only struck when his home was threatened. Sheriff Lyle stopped by later that day. He watched me working in the dirt and said, "Just so you know, no charges are being filed. The neighbors backed you up. So did the video. That animal did what anyone with a spine would have done." He paused. Even the DA shook my hand and said, "Wish more cases ended that clean." I nodded, but I wasn't smiling. "She's not gone," I said. "People like her don't disappear. They wait. They watch." He didn't disagree. "Well," he said, tipping his hat, "if she ever comes back, tell your boy not to worry." He looked toward Coda, resting under the oak tree, ears twitching, one eye still swollen. "'Cause it looks like you've already got a sheriff living in your yard." That night, Evan left something outside by Coda's pen. A hand-drawn sign, taped to the gate. It read, "Private property protected by 1 pig, 1 dad, and 0 mercy." We didn't need fences anymore. Not really. Because what happened here wasn't about land. It wasn't about rules or fines or community appearances. It was about knowing when a line's been crossed and having the guts to say, "Not here." Karen may have walked tall once, in pearls, in power, in meetings where silence meant submission. But that day, she left my land dragged, covered in shame, spine cracked by the very beast she mocked. And maybe that's the point. Power means nothing. if you've never earned the right to hold it. And here, on my land, power still answers to one word: crush. Justice doesn't always come in a courtroom. Sometimes it walks on four legs, bleeding, blind, and still knowing exactly who the enemy is. People say what happened here was brutal. Too far. Too much. Too wild. But let me ask you something. What's the right response when someone dumps a bucket of filth on your child? When they press their heel into your son's back and laugh? When they blind a living creature who's never once hurt anyone, just because they could? We talk so much about restraint, about rules, about patience, but we forget. Boundaries protect more than land. They protect values. They protect people. And when someone breaks through those boundaries, not with ignorance but with cruelty, they deserve to learn what lives on the other side. Karen walked onto my land thinking she owned everything she could see. She thought a clipboard and a title meant more than respect. She thought no one would stop her. But she didn't understand this place. This land wasn't something I bought. It was something I bled for, something passed down acre by acre, lesson by lesson. My grandfather taught me to protect it, to work it, to defend it when I had to. And that day, I did. I didn't fight her with fists. I didn't scream. I opened a gate, and the creature she thought was just a filthy beast showed her what restraint looks like, right before showing her what justice feels like. Was it violent? Yes. But sometimes, violence isn't the absence of control. It's the presence of purpose. Coda didn't chase her beyond the line. He didn't kill her. He didn't destroy her the way she tried to destroy us. He gave her exactly what she gave him: fear, pain, and a lesson she'll never outrun. But here's what matters most. When it was over, and the sheriff stood beside me, he didn't see a criminal. He saw a man who protected his home, a child who never raised a fist, and a wounded animal that still knew how to walk away. That's the real lesson. Not revenge, but response. The kind that's measured, focused, unmistakable. People like Karen exist in every community. They hide behind policies, behind titles, behind fake smiles and real cruelty. But no matter how strong they think they are, they all forget one thing. Eventually they cross the wrong line, and the ground answers back. If you take anything from this story, let it be this: stand your ground, protect what matters, and never let fear convince you that silence is the safer choice. Because justice doesn't always come wrapped in law books. Sometimes it comes with tusks, and it remembers exactly who hurt it. Now let me ask you, have you ever had someone cross a line they never should have? Someone who pushed too far and thought they'd get away with it? Tell me your story in the comments. I read everyone. And trust me, you're not alone. And if you'd open that gate too, you know what to write. If this story moved you, hit that like button. It helps more people see the truth behind what HOA abuse can look like. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more real, raw, and sometimes brutal stories of justice, family, and the land we protect. We're building something bigger here. Not just a channel, a community. And around here we don't run, we don't fold, we defend. See you in the next one. Until then, stay sharp, stay grounded, and never let anyone mistake your silence for surrender.